In the last video, I compared daytime photography and videography between the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra and the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, showcasing the difference in terms of approach and of course where either of those lag or excel. But today, let's discuss low light photography and a little bit of videography as well when it comes to the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra and the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. Starting with some shots in vibrant mode, because I also want to showcase how that performs compared to what you normally use, at least in my case, authentic mode. Starting with this simple shot and showcasing some depth as well. Now first on, the Xiaomi clearly has the better dynamic range control in this shot, but I do like the darker sky on the Samsung better. The Samsung however is way too warm, where the Xiaomi is a little bit too cool. In this shot I tapped for both of them on the sign itself, but for the life of me the Samsung couldn't really 100% get that focus on the sign itself. In terms of contrast, I do prefer the Samsung shot. It allows for a little bit more depth in the shot itself, and here of course using vibrant on the Xiaomi it's a bit brighter, it's a bit more saturated, and it doesn't have the same contrast that you would normally get in the authentic mode. Looking at this shot, there are some things to note. The Xiaomi has the better dynamic range control in some parts, but looking at the boss lights, you can see that the Samsung there has the better dynamic range control. But the Xiaomi looks far more detailed, the sign is far clearer and also the boss itself, and in general the details are better preserved on the Xiaomi. See for instance how soft the grass looks on the Samsung, using the 5x zoom on both of them, so the periscope. Now this inside shot of our futuristic train station in Arnhem, here are some things to note. Both are solid, good details, though I would say that Samsung has a bit of noise on parts of the roof, where the Xiaomi looks a little bit soft on those same parts. In terms of colors, I would say the Xiaomi is a little bit closer to reality. Now last one, using vibrant mode on the Xiaomi, so we have at least an image on how Xiaomi performs when it comes to that vibrant mode, so we can move past this after that and go to the mode that I prefer. Here, Xiaomi is closer to reality, the red sign is properly red and also the warmer colors are there, which you should have in this case. Where on the Samsung the shot is too cool. But both of them, if you look past the color signs, in terms of results, I actually like both of them. They have good details and overall they preserve the feel of it pretty well. Where the Xiaomi of course is closer to reality and I would automatically prefer that shot. Also worth noting is that the bushes there are way too saturated on the Xiaomi. It's a very punchy green. Now in this shot I started using authentic and here I don't think it's even close. The Samsung has more noise on top of the image. The colors are again too cool, but also the Samsung is starting to struggle, introducing the purple hue at the top. As well as this shot. The Samsung has that purple effect, but also far more lens glare than on the Xiaomi, which didn't do an amazing job here either. But in general, the Samsung just doesn't look right between the two. Looking in this shot, I would say both are decent, but nothing to shout home about. The Xiaomi is a bit overexposed at some parts, but the Samsung has a sky that looks like someone has a smudge tool over it. It's just a poor result in terms of colors as well, and it doesn't capture the low light feel. But the Samsung especially, when it comes to the night sky itself, it sometimes has that effect, where it feels like someone used the smudge tool and then softened it. It just doesn't look right. Using the 5x zoom on both, light control is better on the Xiaomi and the image has a really nice control of the contrast in terms of this shot, feeling like a proper low light shot. The Samsung however is too bright and a little bit too sharp as well. With that being said, the Xiaomi does feel like it has some parts where it's too soft and lesser details, especially below the light itself. Here, using the main sensor, one thing straight away that I can see is that the Xiaomi has more natural depth. Look at the bush on the left. Because of that larger sensor, we get that more natural depth. We also have colors that are more accurate and far less sharpening going on in terms of what we get on the Xiaomi. Then we have this light source using the 5x zoom. While the Samsung is over sharpening, it has better dynamic range. See how much better the light itself looks, as well as the general focus is looking better than on the Xiaomi. In this shot, using the ultrawide on the Xiaomi is a bit wider than what we get on the Samsung. Both aren't great by any means, especially when it comes to light sources, creating a lens glare effect. But the sky on the Samsung looks poor to me. It looks too bright, as well as the contrast being far nicer on the Xiaomi. And the greens on the Samsung are too saturated, as well as the blue scooter. The one closer to reality is definitely the Xiaomi. Here another ultra wide shot. Again, these are challenging situations for both I would say both aren't great, but the Samsung is far too bright in terms of shot. And of course too much sharpening going on. The Xiaomi actually looks like a low light shot. This also creates more depth in the shot itself because of that. Using the 3x zoom on the Samsung and the 3.2x zoom on the Xiaomi, the difference is night and day. The Samsung couldn't get focus at all, and that combined with the sharpening makes the image look awful. That being said, the Xiaomi also has a bit of over sharpening going on in some parts. Here another ultra wide shot. Now again, Samsung goes for a bit of a too warm look and too much saturation in some parts, where the Xiaomi looks a little bit closer to reality, but it still needs some work as well. The dynamic range is better on some parts on the Samsung itself, but the Xiaomi looks more detailed and it doesn't have the sharpening going on like it does have on the Samsung. Here we are using the main sensor again on both, and here Samsung is creating some magical cloud or tree behind the building. I have no idea what is going on here. Not to mention again the purple hue. This shouldn't be a thing anymore in phones like this. This shot is probably the worst result that we get when it comes to the Samsung. It just looks really poor. Again, the Xiaomi looks like a low light photography shot, more closer to reality. Though I would say the Xiaomi is a little bit too warm in terms of the building, where the Samsung is a little bit closer in terms of reality when it comes to the colors. But I'm only talking about colors because we shouldn't get a magical tree that doesn't exist. Using the 3.2x zoom on the Xiaomi and the 3x zoom on the Samsung, it switched again in terms of the warmth. The Xiaomi has a little bit too little, where the Samsung is way too much in terms of that warmth. The dynamic range control on the Samsung, however, is a little bit better. Now here another ultra wide shot. The Samsung has the better dynamic range control, with some sharpening going on for it as well, where the Xiaomi looks a little bit too soft on some parts, but it has far less trouble with the glare that we see on the Samsung. The Xiaomi is also again closer in terms of reality. Moving on to some flower shots in low light, both aren't amazing. The Xiaomi has a shallower depth of field and this is noticeable. This makes the depth of field more appealing however, but also it is harder to get that focus point right. The Samsung however is way too sharp and the depth of field looks a little bit more noisy. Here again another flower shot, both are struggling to get that focus really right, and again I would easily pick the Xiaomi between these two. It looks more detailed and I like the depth of field better, but both aren't amazing by any means. Anyway, let's now move away from stills and let's talk about video recording. 4K 60 frames per second above the Xiaomi and the Samsung. I would say feel like the Samsung captures the night view a little bit better here. The colors are more accurate on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. Of course you can zoom out with both using this mode. Samsung really noisy, at least on the phone itself. Or on the Xiaomi of course it's a little bit blue, but the Samsung also has that. Let's go to the 3.2 and the 3 respectively. Wow, the Xiaomi is a lot darker here. 5 times, both pretty much unusable. At the end, when it comes to the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra and the Xiaomi 14 Ultra in low light situations, I would say that both have a lot of work to do. There are some situations where both are just not that good, and there are situations where one performs slightly better than the other, but both of them aren't really excelling in anything. I would say when it comes to preference, the Xiaomi clearly has the Samsung beat for me when it comes to the style, especially if you use authentic. It keeps that feel of low light. But there are some things that we have to discuss when it comes to the Samsung especially. When it comes to the Samsung, yes, sometimes dynamic range is definitely better, but we have to discuss some certain situations. In video, for instance, the Samsung is easily beaten. It tries to, of course, maintain a brighter image, and therefore you get a lot more noise. Showcasing, for instance, in ultra wide, the noise was abysmal. There was a lot of noise in the shot itself. Not to mention that, again, the sky is turning purple. Details getting lost in the video as well when it comes to the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. Zooming in, again, a lot of noise, even in the 3x zoom compared to the 3.2 times zoom on, of course, the Xiaomi. But when it comes to the video, yeah, definitely here I would say the Xiaomi easily has the Samsung beaten. I know I said that it looked better on the phone when it comes to the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra in terms of feel, but I'm taking that back. Looking at the videos again, the Xiaomi had that better natural low light feel. It felt like how it was out there. Of course, looking at a small screen just gives a little bit of a different impression. But again, looking at a bigger screen showcases the differences in terms of approach, but also things like noise and the purple hue that is going on with Samsung. You even get those in stills. Samsung needs to work on that. Those purple hues shouldn't be the thing. Even in these challenging situations, there's just something going on with the processing when it comes to Samsung and their low light photography and especially videography. Not to mention that we did get a magical tree or cloud or something appear on the Samsung shot. It just doesn't look right. Samsung needs to work on that. Now let's move to Xiaomi. Here I would say Xiaomi also needs to work on some things. Especially when it comes to dynamic range, it can be a little bit inconsistent. Sometimes you saw that it did better in dynamic range and sometimes it performed poorer than the Samsung, which isn't really a good thing. And I think Xiaomi needs to really improve upon that when it comes to those kinds of situations where you get that dynamic range. It should be better. We shouldn't have that. The light is filled with light sources and then also extend beyond it. Not to mention glare in some cases also isn't that great when it comes to the Xiaomi. Those are my main critiques when it comes to Xiaomi. Also the difference between authentic and of course vibrant is a little bit inconsistent as well when it comes to the approach between those two things. Either way, that was my comparison between the two. I would say that while the Xiaomi by no means is great in low light, it definitely has the Samsung beat. And I know that is also down to the bigger sensors, but then Samsung should have done the same. Either way, low light photography, videography, I easily pick the Xiaomi. And I know that not a lot of people will like those comments. I already seen it on the previous video. Either way, hope you enjoyed this video. And of course, if you did, don't forget to like, subscribe and so on. We're getting pretty close to 7,500 subscribers. So thank you for that. Either way, have a good one and talk to you guys in the next.